All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Rugby Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo, sitting in for Hugh Cahill this week. I'm joined by Fiona Hayes, Grace Davitt and Jonny Holland this week, with plenty on the menu. From Ireland's dominant win over Wales in the Women's Six Nations, Leinster booking a Heineken Champions Cup date with none other than Ronan O'Gara La Rochelle's head coach, and the return of Simon Zebo to the red of Munster and potentially the green of Ireland. First off, a hello to everyone, and we'll jump straight in. Ireland's 45-0 win over Wales. Fiona, I'll come to you first. Just in terms of the performance, it was great. But at this, I think what was possibly most impressive was they haven't played for 6 months, and from the get-go, they were just on it.
Absolutely. An exciting day, I think, for Irish women's rugby. We've been waiting a long time to see a performance like that, and they really showed. I think the big thing about it all is the fact that they 20 training camps. So although we haven't been playing rugby at AIL level in Ireland or with Munster or anything, it was really good for them to get together as a group. And I also think they seemed to bonded a lot in those sessions, you know, because they were the only team training, and it seemed to just click for them on the day. And it was absolutely amazing as an ex-player, but also as a supporter, just watching how everything came together. Bigger task ahead against France, but we have to really congratulate them on that win against Wales. It was amazing.
And Grace, just coming to you now, before we get into individual performances and what really stood out, which was quite a lot of things, how much can we read into it given where Wales are at, and then maybe with the other eye kind of looking ahead to where France will be in terms of being one of the top two in the Six Nations?
Like, I think it was such a huge performance from them. Like, even though, you know, Wales, it was kind of a mixture of both. Wales weren't really up to much. And I suppose the big key is that Wales didn't really put them under any pressure in defence. And that'll be a totally different match against France. Their line speed is tremendous. They're up in your face. And, you know, Ireland will have to get used to adjusting to that. Maybe their lines of run, you know, to make sure that they're adjusting for that extra speed. Ireland, you know, definitely 10 times better. You know, the fact that they were so clinical in that first half, and even with Wales putting them under pressure and trying to do that outside in defence, you know, they were still making breaks. And I suppose that second half, you know, they let the foot off the pedal a bit. But I suppose the key thing is they were attacking for most of the game, whereas with France, it could be a different scenario. We even seen with Wales had most of the ball, but once France got that attacking ability, they were just scoring off it literally within 2 minutes. So that's the real key, is that when they do turn the ball over, they're just going to have to set that defensive mode. They did it really well in that first half. They put players under pressure against Wales. So that'll be key as well, making sure they have the confidence to keep coming up.
And what really helps as well, you have a player like Beth Parsons. Of course, the 2 tries were impressive, but there was a great line in commentary that, you know, people talk about a star in the making, but in fact, she's a star made in many ways. And if I recall last year, I think during the Six Nations before the pandemic kind of threw everything all over the place, she was doing her leaving cert, if I recall correctly. So she's extremely young. There's a lot of potential still to come. And I guess that's the most exciting thing, even looking beyond the France game.
Yeah, I think like it's really worrying, you know, at some parts, you know, you put your mammy kind of head on, you go, this is a 16-year-old who's not even allowed to play AIL rugby, and she's been straight thrown into international rugby at the highest level, Six Nations. And, you know, it can make and break you to some players, you know, if you make mistakes and your confidence is dropped. But Bavian has just taken it in her stride. And like you say, she's had the commitments outside, and it's probably stood to her and to the Sevens players with having so many camps to be integrated into that squad. And, you know, we seen it. It's not even just her pace, or it's like literally her power. She reminds me, I don't know if you think, Fee, but she reminds me of Ali Miller. It's that there's like that players are on her, and she's no right to get through there. But it's like her leg drive and her acceleration and her just commitment to, I can see where I'm going, and she drives it. And even there was a part in the second half, and I think it was Dorothy Wall gave her a tip on, and she literally made ground like 5 meters out where defense is so strong. So like really like a lot to her game, and really good work rate. So and she's so early in her career, which is brilliant.
Yeah, just on those Ali Miller comparisons, I guess, Fiona, what do you make of that?
Ali'd be delighted to hear that now. No, definitely. It's good to see. It's good for women's rugby. You know, Ali back in her day was she still probably will play with club, but Ali back in her day was kind of the X factor player for us, Grace. You know yourself, when you needed a try, she'd always come up with it. And I think Baven, Ali pressure didn't get to Ali. She didn't really think about it. Whereas I feel like Baven could be the same kind of character where, you know, a lot of players around her have pressure and know she'll come up with something, but she tends to come up with the goods on the day. And Grace, you spoke about Dorothy Wall there is another kind of X Factor player. I actually retired because of Dorothy Wall. She made me realize I need to get out of here. I was down at Munster training. It was my last year, and I was like, this is the first time in my life saying I do not want to tackle that. I want to stand aside. But absolute amazing performance for her. Another young player as well. The two of them are the youngest on the squad. Like Dorothy, 23 big carries all over the gain line, and that was just so exciting for me. But then in defence, 8 tackles as well, which were quite dominant as well. So I think there's definitely 2 players to be excited about.
And another exciting part of the game, of course, player of the match was Hannah Tyrell. And of course, there was a good halfback partnership with Catherine Dane there. I suppose, Johnny, with that 10 position, I mean, since Niamh Briggs, maybe it hasn't been, it's maybe not a position that's been filled as adequately as had been previously during the Grand Slam winning years. But as Fiona Coughlin said on commentary, there was a nice interlinking between the backs and the forwards, and that position is going to be crucial going forward, especially this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you'd see the control in the game, but it's also the way, like, Hannah wasn't afraid to have the crossfield kick for Bevan's try, and then she, one of the tries with her own try, which she took a short line as well. Just shows different skills in the game as well. And it was fluid between 9 and 10, and they ran the front foot all day. I suppose that helps, but it's the different skills that she brought to the game, and she was fairly passionate about her own try as well, which was it's good to see. Like, you see a 10 with a bit of spirit in there as well. Like, obviously Senna Naupu was going to do that short line all day, and she had a lovely one. But seeing Hannah do the same thing, I mean, she's just reading the game as she goes, as opposed to standing back and organising outside her. So it's just kind of playing in that moment. And when the team are doing that, I think there's a lot of great flow inside there. And I think they played with a smile on their face. Anyway, you'd see that they were, caught up in camp for so long. They just wanted to kind of express themselves on the pitch, and it looked like they did that because the result helped, because you see, the first half you get your bonus point early, and Emer Considine was going well. She's gliding over the ground. Beth Parsons is just like a pocket rocket. That explosive power is insane. I saw some of the highlights of last year when she's still a Leinster shooting, or just finished, and you see the interception, the length of the pitch, and you just see the pace and power. But like you said, it was the power across the 5 metre channel where you're like, is she going to stop here, or is she just going to keep carrying? And sometimes you're kind of going, where Wales really poor here, like, you don't expect a 10 to take a short line like Hannah did and get through like that, or you don't expect a winger to just bounce off the full back and go again. But it's that glide around the last defender that, you can look at it and say it looks very easy, but I think that's what the girls are doing there. They're making it look very easy. So, like, it's going to be very interesting to see with the points that they racked up, especially with a bit of a barren period in the second half, and the way France racked up the same amount of points. You look at Ireland coming home, wanting to express themselves again and unleash that kind of performance that they obviously clearly think they have within them. Confidence is high, and they're hoping to bring it home and unleash something on France now. And France at home and France away might be 2 different things, but it's going to be one hell of a game.
Yeah, and one of the most impressive things was the platform provided by the forwards and the set piece, Fiona. Why did it work against Wales, and are we going to see something vaguely similar against France, or will they get as much joy from it, do you imagine?
Well, I was watching the scrums in detail. So, like, over the last maybe year or two, I couldn't understand what was going wrong in scrums. I was looking at them in detail, and it was all got to do with height and body position and all that kind of stuff. But they really seem to have nailed down that detail, especially Linda and Young. She was absolutely, her body height. Lindsay was the same. They were just perfectly balanced, and it's like the time together they've spent as a front row with Clean and Maloney, it's like they're getting better and better as they go on, because we never doubted any of their ball carrying ability around the park. But I know over the years we might have looked at the scrums and asked, why is an Irish scrum going backwards, when that was probably one of our more dominant kind of things in the years previous. So I was really excited looking at that, and the success rate was quite high. Couple of last scrums scrums in the second half, but that's when you're going on, when referee decides who will I go 1, 2, 3 and makes a quick decision. We all know that happens at times and nobody's wrong, as they tell you anyway. But I was very, very excited to see that scrum being quite dominant, and that pushover was, even World Rugby released a clip of it online of that pushover drive from Ireland, and you could just see the excitement on the props' faces, and I know that well, and you just feel like I'm doing a good job, and that then translates to everybody else around the pitch. And we could see that then when Hannah get the ball, she had more space, she was able to get it out wide. We've been talking about getting Bevan the ball. This is what we needed to do to get her the ball, and we see that. When it comes to France, quite a dominant pack. They absolutely done the exact same thing to Wales that Ireland had done. So I'm very, very I'm very excited at looking at that battle at scrum time, especially to see will the girls revert back to old ways. But I don't think so. I think that gelling has really come together, and it's going to be a big, big battle up front at scrum time. And also lineouts, I have to compliment that. It was something that had been kind of maybe around the 50 or 60 effective mark, which wouldn't be good enough for international rugby. And they've really nailed down that. And I think a lot of it had to do with where they were calling the line out or who they were calling the line out on. And they seem to have got their leader. And Aoife McDermott went back in there and made a big, big, I mean, if you've someone that tall, we've seen it with Devin Toner over the years, you just want to if you can get the ball in quick, it doesn't matter, no defence is going to get up to that height. And I think they really, really nailed it in that Wales game. And as I said, France will be a different game, but it's exciting to think of the prospect of what's going to happen.
Yeah, and there are no changes to the team, which was released earlier today as well, and probably no call to make a change, I guess, Grace, particularly with momentum, confidence, and all the positives you can take from that as well. But how do they match up against France, not just, I guess, in the forwards, but across the back line as well?
Oh, I think, they're the same kind of match in the backs as the forwards, and with France and Ireland, like you have that mixture of, we've seen a 15 for France against Wales, absolutely amazing talent, and then you see Bevan, so a great match there, and even the wings for pace, and they don't even have their sevens players in, but huge talent coming through there. And I think the match of experience in Ireland and fresh talent is amazing, and France have the exact same. And I think what that brings is, you have the support structure of Sene Nupu there, and then you have, the confidence. We've seen it in years previous where you have the confidence of youth coming in. They're not afraid to try things and make a mistake. Maybe it's as we get older, we're more worried about doing things off the cuff. And we've seen that with Ireland, and the decision making of the girls. It was similar. Like you seen Hannah at one stage, she went to pass wide and she seen Wales drift off her and was like, right, I'm taking this gap. And I think it kind of led to that break at the very start of the first half. And that's the way France are going to play. They play that off the cuff. I suppose the big thing to look out for in the men and female is the offloading game, and making sure, yes, we come up hard and we close them down early, but making sure that we get man on ball and then we close them down, because they will be looking for that offload, and that's the key. But we definitely have the pace to match them, whereas before, you would have said that it wasn't, we didn't really have the pace to match the French side, but definitely a good match. And you think I'm not sure if there's any changes to their match, or their match day squad, but like they Tremillier and stuff coming off the bench, which was huge experience too, and she could make a big difference. But no, I think a great match. And Catherine Dane, keep that 9 under control. We know that she's their big playmaker, and I think if we can put her under pressure, especially if it's a good match in the scrum, that it'll make a difficult day for them.
All right, and so Ireland-France will be on at 2:15 Saturday, and you can follow it via our live blog on RTÉ.ie and the RTÉ News app, or watch live on RT2 or RT Player, or if you're beside a radio, listen live on RT Radio 1's Saturday Sport. Jonny, Leinster at the weekend, a statement win over the reigning Heineken Champions Cup winners, Exeter. Obviously, we'll get into the nitty gritty, I suppose, of the relatively poor start and how they kind of fought back. But in terms of it being a statement win, it really, I suppose, they're already on the map, of course, Leinster. But does that make them kind of favourites for you?
I think so, yeah. I think we didn't really know where they were, just with the standard of the Pro 14, I suppose. And we were going from the standard of Irish rugby, really, weren't we? Like, it was Ulster trying to chase them down in the conference. It was Munster trying to upset them in a final. And we all thought, Fiona, that we were it was our time and all the rest of it, but it didn't work out. Leinster just found another gear, and I think that always happens Munster Leinster. It's a very tight game. Defences are on top. No one wants to give the other side anything, but Leinster found the way to kind of win that game. And the Exeter one was just a statement, because I kind of said I had a small Twitter poll, and I was kind of going Exeter or Leinster, and like obviously my following, whatever is there, would be quite Irish, and I was like, right, they're giving Leinster the benefit of the doubt here, but it's still very close. So I just kind of said, don't write Exeter off at home. What a team, like defending champions. And Jesus, was I proven wrong. Leinster, they just, that's why we didn't really know. Like, imagine Leinster, we don't know what they're capable of because of the way the league is at the moment, I think. And I've been a little bit critical of the other sides, outside of Irish rugby, obviously, but the way they played the game. Now, I do think Exeter, they'll be looking back at that game and going, what have we done here? The opposite the week before. But how they didn't kick the ball in that, throughout the kind of, the second quarter of the game, I suppose, and even in the second half, how they didn't take more control of that. I think because they scored so early in the first half and scored so easily, they probably thought, let's not kick this. We have them with the ball in their hand, but you have to be able to change your tactics. Like, and with Rob Baxter, you think that they would do that a small bit more. But Leinster didn't panic. They just got their way back into the game, just tipped away nicely and just overturned them. But it was always within them. It's just the nature of how they did it probably makes them favourites now, yeah.
And when we look at like those first 10 minutes, what went wrong for Leinster, what were Exeter doing well, and then you I suppose you compare it to the 70 minutes that came after that. What was the difference? What adjustments were made?
You don't see Leinster go down like that. Like, maybe they were rocked. Maybe they didn't play at that intensity for the couple of weeks before that. Munster will say that they were at that intensity, but this is Exeter who won the Champions Cup, so you could argue that Leinster weren't prepped. They didn't play the week before. Maybe they did their prep, but this is just the nature of not playing the week before and not playing the top European sides week in, week out. So maybe that was it. Who knows? They seem to be very poor individual errors as well, So I don't know what it was. Only the players will tell you what it was. You can read it from the outside all you want. These freak things can happen anyway. My first Interpro against Leinster, we thought we were under 18. We were well geared up. Kicked the ball off and they scored literally from the kickoff, I'd say. So these things just happen and you get a kind of a hold of the game afterwards. But I think it was just the way they were able to stay calm. They've been in that position so many times in Europe across the last couple of years that they just know to stay calm and just chip away. They got the next score fairly handy, actually. Once they got their first meaningful possession, they got their score. And after that, you were kind of going, right, we have a game here, and thankfully we did, because I think if Leinster lost that game and if the first 10 minutes continued, you'd be looking at Irish rugby thinking we're in big trouble here if Leinster are that far off the pace. For the sake of the rest of Irish rugby, I think it was a good thing that Leinster were able to show that their class actually is up there, because that would have been bleak enough.
Yeah, and just one quick thing on the officiating calls, because in your column, which people can read on rte.ie/rugby, just added in there. There were a few moments that you kind of picked out. Can you just talk us through a couple of them? I guess in a way you were saying it didn't really have a bearing on the final result, but just on the way the game flowed.
Yeah, I suppose like the kind of incidents that may have drawn a card at different stages of other games probably went against Leinster. So from the overall result, I don't think it really had a major say, and that probably kept people from talking about it as much. But at the same time, I just think it's a little bit confusing. I think you see the Jake Ball incident recently and it going unpunished, and then you have clear contact with the head. Having played the game not recently, you're thinking this is allowed in our time. But that was kind of some of my points in the column, that coaching has to move on in the way that, if a coach came in now and told you to tuck the ball up your jumper and don't do anything else, you kind of go, he's a relic or she's a relic, and you need to move with the games. We have to do the same thing with the laws, I think, and the spear tackle or getting hips above our heads and all the rest of it was just stamped out completely after that World Cup in 2011, wasn't it? So we have to probably take the same approach, as much as we may or may not like it. And I was looking at that first tackle on Ross Byrne thinking, that's unlucky. It's a very dominant hit from a tall second row who plays probably a little bit on the edge anyway. And I thought, from one camera angle, unbelievable tackle. And then when they turned the camera angle around, I called him unbelievably unlucky. But you listen to the referee going through his the logic of it, the wording of it, naming all the key buzzwords, and then just going against the decision. I don't understand how he can do that. I thought, yeah, a lot of people, if you read the kind of reaction to it, a yellow card is probably fair because you show you're going in the right direction with the laws, but you're giving him a small benefit of the doubt as well. Luckily, Ross Byrne wasn't hurt, and he got up and got on with it and kicked his points like he's been doing all season. But like, I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that you have to be consistent with it to really stamp it out, and I just didn't feel that they were consistent with it.
Yeah, I suppose before we get into Ronan O'Gara and La Rochelle and maybe what Leinster can possibly expect in a couple of weeks, Grace, I suppose looking at the Champions Cup as it's panned out and the four teams that are left standing, Leinster, La Rochelle, and then on the other side of it, Toulouse and Bordeaux, is this kind of more or less what you would have expected in terms of who would be left standing at this point?
Yeah, I think as we're saying with the Irish teams, there wasn't going to be too much success there. With Leinster have always been well ahead of the rest of them, and the French teams have been running so well. I suppose the big shock there was probably Race and Metro not going through, and Bordeaux taking the scalp off them. That's a huge bonus for them. You would probably see that Toulouse, you would kind of surmise Toulouse with the experience of Champions Cup, that they'll maybe make it through, and it would be great. Obviously, huge battle with Ronan O'Gara, La Rochelle, and Leinster going through. But as we said, for Irish rugby, wouldn't it be amazing if Leinster got to that final and it was a Leinster-Toulouse final, and we have Irish in the final, and we see in Exeter how successful they were last year, like that. Like, I think that was the biggest battle of last weekend, wasn't it? And them doing the double with the Premiership and the Champions Cup, they were going to be riding on the back of that and a team to be battled with. So definitely a huge success for Ireland, I suppose, with Leinster getting out, and like the French teams are so strong, and COVID has had some issues in some countries more than others, and I think France have benefited from that.
Yeah, and in terms of Ronan O'Gara, or ROG to his mates, which I am not one, but obviously I don't really know him. But Fiona, I suppose the coaching trajectory he's kind of gone on, going abroad, Crusaders, Racing 92, and now being a head coach at La Rochelle, and that broadening of horizons, I guess it says something very positive about him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when he went to the Crusaders, kind of after that, racing on to Crusaders, you knew that he really wanted to expand his coaching instead of just sticking to how we play on one hemisphere or not. He was really going out there to really kind of broaden it. And just watching him with La Rochelle, I mean, they weren't a team we would have really looked at in that top 14 or heard of very much, like competing, like the likes of Toulouse or Toulon or Racing or Claremont. And it seems that ROG has seemed to, I'm not his friend either, but I'll go with it. It seems ROG has really gelled him. And for me, it's the players playing and looking at what they're doing. I mean, I'll give you, for example, I watched Will Skelton for years. I saw him at the Waratahs. I saw him with Saracens. I know he lost whatever it was, I think he lost 21 kg or something massive with Saracens, but they still didn't get the best out of him, and he just wasn't playing that. I don't know what it was. There was no offload game. He was very one-dimensional. And now look at him. He's up for European Player of the Year. He's really he's slimmed down. He's offloading. He's a threat with the ball. He's getting to rucks. He's doing his job. And that's what I've seen with Ronan, is that he seems to be getting the best out of players. You look at Aldrich as well, another player who we've heard a lot about and seen him with France, but with La Rochelle, his game is just, it's exciting to watch. He's scored some super tries, and it's kind of that mix. I mean, we know they've Iowa West, they've all these different kind of players coming in, and he seems to have gelled them all together, but in a game that's nice to watch. I mean, Grace, you talked about the French teams. I was so excited all weekend, and the two French games, French on French, and there wasn't a try to be scored, and we were talking about offloading and the excitement of going into these games, but it seems to, again, say La Rochelle stuck to what they do best. And we saw a 45-21 win and some amazing tries scored. So I'm really excited at that prospect of the Leinster game, and seeing, are they going to really try and exploit those areas? We know what Leinster have, but also ROG knows exactly what Leinster has. So it has the prospect to be in a good tactical kind of mind of two coaches, himself versus Leo and Stuart. So I'm looking forward to it big time.
Yeah, and Johnny, on that template that Fiona's talking about there, in regards to, I suppose, the difference of playing in Europe and then the top 14, have you noticed anything in the way, I suppose, Ronan O'Gara has, how he's approached it as a coach, and particularly tactically?
Yeah, I suppose like if you look at, Fiona touched on the fact that, ROG played Munster for a long time under the same game plan that he probably devised, and he was just in his own head for a lot of the time. And then Rob Penny came in and, ROG didn't play, he played a couple of seasons there, but it didn't change his way of thinking, I would imagine. Like I can imagine now after playing, and I'm putting words in his head, but like, or in his mouth, but when you're playing that style of rugby for a long time, it takes a lot of change, like, and maybe he didn't fully appreciate that at the time, I don't know. But since then, he went to Racing and saw a different style of play, a lot more offloading, a lot more tempo, I suppose. Don't mean a lot more tempo because we all try to play with tempo, but it really is pushing the pace of that game and just lifting the ball when it's available and seeing what happens afterwards. And then, going into the Crusaders, you probably get a mix of both where they really depend on their offloading game, but it's very controlled. It's like they've done it 101 times before they even throw the offload in the game. It's just really, really controlled. So, and I know that kind of KBA became a bit of a buzz phrase during the week that he said it, and these things always happen. And I think he said it himself, like how, one phrase came out of his mouth and people kind of get sucked into it. But like, he just seems really relaxed, doesn't he? Like, it's like he's been in France now forever. But I did see on one of his own columns that he's coaching now 8 years. I thought it made me feel very old anyway. Because I only got a contract because Raj left, so thankfully he did move on. But like, yeah, 8 years, I couldn't really understand it. So he's 8 years in the game now, and he's obviously after coming on a lot. But you can see, like, he has brought a lot of that into La Rochelle. There's a lot of pace on their game. They don't wait around, like, and I know he puts a lot of credit towards their centres, and they've got a Kiwi halfback partnership and stuff like that. So. He's got players, and he's probably not got a small budget or anything, but he's definitely making good ground with it. Now, I suppose there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say disrespect, maybe too much hype around Rog this week. A lot of people forgetting that John O'Gibbs is probably running the show over there as well. Like, so he's under good guidance and stuff. And, we're talking about bringing him back all the time, and everyone wants him back all the time. But, he's really impressed me in the way that he's gone about his business, a long-term approach, not coming home before he's ready. Maybe he's waiting for one or two fellas that he still knows a bit too personally to move on. But yeah, you can see that he's really changed his approach to the media. Probably seems like he's just really, really enjoying it. I don't think he's in a rush to bring that to Ireland yet,
Yeah, and whether he does return home or not, only the future is going to tell. It probably will happen at some point, but we'll wait and see when that does. Someone who definitely is Simon Zebo, who is back at Munster next season. Johnny, you'd know him obviously, and he's here on a 1-year deal. As a character first, and then as a player, what's he bringing back to the table, especially after the 3 years away in France?
A smile, I suppose, anyway, for a start, because he doesn't play without it, and if he is playing without it, he might as well not be there. You see, in the time when I was at Munster and Zebo was there was a couple of things like you're not using social media, and he just wasn't allowed to express himself for a period of time. He just didn't really enjoy it. It didn't look like he was enjoying his game, and all of a sudden you let him use his phone and you let him express himself, and all of a sudden he's going really well, like, and it looks like he has really enjoyed himself in France. But I think he seems to really like Cork. He still has the Cork jerseys on over there, and he's coming home now. So I hope he brings a bit of an edge with him as well, though, along with that smile. Because he's a top player, like a top player. You see how he rides a tackle and gets out the other side of it, the footwork. People don't seem to deal with him. Like, you might look and go, how is that footwork getting away from a tackle? How is he? He's very strong. Like, he might not put it to good use all the time, and he might not express it all the time. But when he needs to, he's out the other side of that tackle, and he's very, very hard to deal with. So, like, you're looking at a guy who will unlock defenses at the top end of the game, and I think that's what Munster need, definitely. Now, it's a difficult one because, like, you're looking at Sweets going to La Rochelle. The fact that he has to leave Munster broke my heart, being close to the guy. But there's been a bit of movement, and it's great to see someone coming home. It's also going to impact some of the guys that we've been excited about. Will it impact Shane Daly? It obviously has impacted Sweets and maybe other things there. There's a lot of variables there. So there's a bit of both in there, like what was already here that we could have developed. But I think it's massively exciting with Zebo coming home. I think the way he can manipulate a game when he's on form, you cannot stop him. And you've seen the hat-tricks in Europe. That's what you're bringing home. You're bringing home a hat-trick in Europe, or you're bringing home tries in Europe. Still a top try scorer, and he scores some tries in Racing as well. So it's massively exciting. But that's my point. I think you don't want to get so excited. I was about to write a tweet or something yesterday. I don't know when it was. It's where I'm always on Twitter when I'm talking. But it was I think someone said, like, what's he going to bring? And I was, in my head, I was like, everything, like he's a top player. And then I just kind of slowed down a small bit, because I think when you get that excited about one fella in particular, you're knocking 3 other fellas who are waiting or had been waiting for that jersey or may already have that jersey. So I think you have to be careful sometimes when you put a lot of, like, if the public were to decide the team in the morning, Zebo gets on the team, and then they're going, but I want Shane Daly to play as well, but I also want Conway to play. And people don't really think about the effect it has on the rest of the squad, So like people from the outside pick a team and there's 40 people on the list, they just pick everyone. They don't tell you who to drop. So I'd like to know who's being dropped at the moment. But long story short, he's a massively positive signing for Munster.
And Fiona, from a supporter's point of view, of course, as well, it's huge as well. Obviously, he is the record try scorer there, of course. And as Johnny was saying, in terms of playing with a smile on his face, he does seem to connect well with the public down there.
Yeah, we absolutely love him. Adore him. Down in Limerick anyway, it's Zebo and Keith Earls, no one else. Look, to be honest with you, I've been up in Thomond Park for loads of those games. I go to every home game and I'd be just standing in the crowd, and it's that X factor, that excitement he brings to the crowd, that's what people are looking forward to. He mightn't do anything, and if the crowd starts shouting Zebo, his whole face lights up, and you can see he loves that interaction. And I suppose as fans, that's just something people love as well, being able to be part of that and seeing his reaction onto that. So it's kind of exciting from supporters' side of things, but I think it's exciting for him as well. I mean, he's never said that he doesn't want to play with Ireland or he doesn't want to try and get back there. And I'm sure there's been a lot of talk about his relationship with Joe Schmidt over the years, and it mightn't have been the best. But he's looking at this as a new slate, and maybe he wants to get capped. He's not coming back here to stand on that pitch at Thomond Park and smile at everyone calling his name. He wants to be playing with Ireland, and he is at the top of his game. He's been playing he scored 115 points over in France, which is an easy thing to do. Like, he's playing very well with Racing. He's linking up with Teddy Thomas and the other wing as well at times, and his old buddy Donica there in the second row. They were doing some great tweeting as well, like you, Johnny. But it's exciting. It's exciting for a fan to see him back, and people have called for it and wanted it. And it's great that the RFU are investing a small bit of money in it anyway. So we're looking forward to it down in Thomond Park.
Yeah, and I'd say Donica's probably glad he's not going to be dragged onto Twitter and different videos and things at the same time.
He enjoys that.
I think I guess
he's trying to be humble. Yeah, no, he just wants a platform. Yeah, that's not his own.
Yeah, and the other dimension as well, Grace, is some of those players of that generation that Zebo would have come through with at Munster. We're talking about the likes of Keith Earls, Conor Murray, Peter O'Mahony, a generation that probably haven't won as much as they would have liked at a provincial level. So it's obviously exciting for them. And then maybe how he links up with the likes of Joey Carberry as well, of that kind of younger crop that are there too.
Yeah, it is that, as we were saying earlier, that match of experience and then, fresh blood coming through. And, we've seen how the young guys are doing so well at Ireland, and Zebo he's going to add that X factor. He's going to do brilliantly. He pulls things out, and you're going, how does he even make something out of that? But I think the big thing is not to put so much pressure that, Zebo's back, Munster are going to be amazing. I think that's the big key. We seen them against Leinster in that final, and we thought they were going to do a lot better than they did, and they didn't. And I think Zebo, if they allow it, he could just be the plaster, and it's not going to fix that. And I think they need to make sure not just rely on him, and make sure that they're still building and still creating the team ethos and improving things to get up to that Leinster level. And yes, he's going to help it, and he's going to build it. And you have the Conway, and definitely it's great to see Carberry back after so long out, and he'll be dying to include him in his game, and especially like if he's at 15 or on the wing, working off them outside centres. So definitely really exciting, but I will be cautious to say that he's going to fix everything that's wrong at Munster, and to make sure to put the work in this off season, and make sure that they build around them.
Yeah, and the other subplot, of course, is Ireland and whether he adds to his 35 caps. Now, we don't know, and we can't really second guess Andy Farrell, so I'm just going to throw this one to the floor because it's going to be more of a question of opinion. But looking at the depth chart and everyone being fit, and of course there's the likes of Hugo Keenan, who's made the 15 shirt his own, and then you've, on the wing, maybe James Lowe will obviously improved from the Six Nations just gone, but would you have him back? And whoever wants to take that bait first can definitely do that.
I'll jump in there. I'll go Gracie there. I'd say I'd get him up to camp and see how he goes. You know, there's no harm. Anyone with that talent would push other guys on. I don't know whether he'll get that starting jersey, but then at the start of the year, no one spoke about Hugo Keenan. We didn't know much about him, and he's absolutely blown fans out of the water with how he's playing, with the safety, that same kind of Rob Kearney style under the ball. And but it'd be good for someone to be pushing him at 15, because I haven't seen Shane Daly do it, to be honest. Now, I know he's not playing 15 a lot of the time with Munster. They have him on the wing when they're playing with him, when he's playing. So I do think get him up to camp. Whether he'll add to his caps, I'm not sure, but he'll definitely add to the crack up there anyway, I'd say.
My view is, yeah, same as Fee, but I think, we said under Joe Schmidt, Joe Schmidt over the years, because of the little time he had with them Irish players, he was very structured, and he became so structured towards the end. You couldn't make a mistake. Players were afraid to offload, and we were very critical of Ireland at the start of the Six Nations with the lack of offloading in the game, and then we've seen how they improved as the Six Nations went on, with a bit more confidence and opening up that whole new coaching system and wanting to offload and trying to keep the ball alive, and I think that will suit Zebo a lot more than maybe in previous years at Ireland. So it could be another string, to the Irish bow. And as Fee says, it's going to do nothing but put pressure on players that are there, and that's only going to improve the squad as a whole. So Johnny might give a bigger insight now.
No, not at all. I think the pressure at the Irish level means that he has to come back at his best, and obviously that's where his ambition is. But when he is at his best, obviously playing off Finn Russell and stuff like that, there's offloads available to him. But I think when he's the one who gets the offload, he's a poacher anyway. He just loves to score tries. So when he's running off a shoulder, it's actually very, very hard to stop him when he gets that ball with the momentum in behind. You've seen that the offload game, it might create a gap, and it might get us in behind, but it's finishing that off is the next step. And he is a guy that can finish that off. He doesn't slow down. He only gets going. I remember we used to do 10-meter sprints, and I'm small, so I'd be all right off the mark. So I was I really liked my 10-meter score through the gates, but it was a standing start. So I'd be going around Cork being like, Zebo's past it here. I'm definitely, I'm after beating a score. He obviously wasn't competing with me on a Monday morning because he was probably looking at a Lions playing or something else. But we had a situation in training not long after where he was covering across, and I had a clear run at the corner, equal distance, and I was, very short decision making. But I was like, I've got him here because my speed is half decent, and I'd say he had plenty of time to catch me and have space left over. I just did not get anywhere near the corner. My point is that he's not off the mark. He's obviously very quick, but when he gets going, it's very, very hard to stop. He's rapid when he's going, and it doesn't look rapid like Jordan Armour looks rapid. But God Almighty, you stop that when he gets in behind. So I think he does add another dimension to that. But there's so much. I know, we were on this podcast a couple of months back, and we were saying James Lowe is the answer to all our problems, and James Lowe didn't have a great defensive display, I suppose, in his couple of games. But he's a monster of a left boot, and we know what he can bring. You saw it the weekend against Exeter. Once he gets on the outside, that big fend, those massive legs, and he can actually move around the outside as well as that, not just creating the contact. I know Robbie Henshaw looked a bit frustrated with him at one stage because he actually was a typical winger, went for the corner and got bundled into touch. But there's so much competition in that Irish squad that getting up to camp, like two girls have said, is the first step in that process. Seeing how he interacts with people in around the new environment. He has to come in now with a kind of a fresh understanding, a kind of a clean slate, like you said, Fiona, and that he's come in that he's not the boss inside an Irish camp. He's coming in now to challenge and get his place back, which I think would be good for him. I think that will create a spark and we'll see the best out of him. But there's a lot of competition up there that they don't. I don't like saying it, but they don't need Simon Zebo at the moment. It's a nice to have, and if he turns up like the Simon Zebo that was chomping at the bit, really enjoying Irish camp, then you're going to have a selection headache on your hands, because that left wing and that full back spot, there's plenty of people queuing up, and Hugo Keenan's done nothing wrong. So it's I would like to be Andy Farrell when the whole lot of them are fit and actually really taking their chances, Yeah.
Now, before we go, the Rainbow Cup, which is just over a week away before it starts, we'll have some new laws trialed in that. I'm not sure what you think of it. We'll just go through what they are, though. The 20-minute red card, the captain's challenge, and the goal line dropouts. And some of those have already been in use in Super Rugby. But again, throwing this one to the floor, but what do you make of those? Are they necessary? And do you think they'll have a positive impact?
I'm going to go first this one. The big thing on the red cards, you know, and we were Johnny was saying it at the start there, you know, with decisions against Leinster, you know, and the high tackles, and how are we ever going to get rid of them if there's not a high enough you know, punishment for them? And if we have players getting red cards and guys getting concussed, and then they're only going, 20 minutes and sure I'm off, but my team's not really been punished, you know, it's not going to make a huge change, as Johnny was saying, to the coaching setup and going, right, you know, we've seen Farrell and, you know, constantly making high tackles in the Premiership and England, and nothing changing. You're going, you know, it has to be a whole system change. And for me, you know, making a red card at 20 minutes, yes, it might encourage referees to give a red card and say, yes, that definitely is a red card offence. You know, but then if it goes back to a full match, you know, sending off, are they going to go back down to a yellow? It might be a good way to, you know, encourage refs to give a red card, but I just don't think it's a big enough punishment for teams.
I'm going to disagree with you, Grace, there.
Good.
I think it's a good idea, because I think what was happening from the Six Nations was referees were starting to feel a bit of pressure. I mean, every tweet going was about how Wales won due to all the red cards that other teams were getting, you know, and it was just a constant thing, and it was glossing over all the games, and it was just after every game it was red card. So we look now, and I know, Johnny, you spoke about that consistency kind of going away, but I do think that they probably were talked to at that level and said, look, we've got to take the focus off us and rather have it on the game a little bit. So I think with these red cards, it's going to be bad on the players, because you're gone. So you're gone from the pitch, but I know it's 20 minutes, which will affect your team, but someone else will go on. So it's putting the onus back on the players to really, for their own game, to really look at themselves individually, because it's not affecting the whole team. It is for 20 minutes, but not as bad as it was before. So I really think that it's kind of putting it back on the players, saying, get it right for yourself. And the referees, I could be wrong, might handing them out a little bit more freer now than we've been seeing. So therefore, players are really, really going to have to tighten up that tackle area and tighten up their skills around that and the breakdown as well. So I think it's a good thing. I'm looking forward to having a look at it and see, does it affect, and having a look and seeing if the refs are going to be firing them out every few minutes as well, which we don't want to see. But I think it will bring a bit more consistency back again now to this ref and of that area especially.
But I think like, to agree with you to some degree, but also disagree with it. Like, it depends on the situation. It might seem like a great punishment, but it also might seem like absolutely nothing for the offence that was there as well. So like, if you look at Xander Fagerson or Peter O'Mahony or someone, 20 minutes probably seems about right, doesn't it? But if you look at something else where it's a blatant red card, is that still a 20-minute red card? You know, so, and you could lose a big player, and losing the big player regardless, 20 minutes off the pitch and bringing on someone who wasn't supposed to start anyway, depending on the squad that you have, it's going to affect different squads differently. Like if you got, you know, the Saracens of old, or, you know, Leinster, even with the squad that they have, if they're going to bring on someone who possibly should have started or could have started in any other province anyway, coming back on the pitch, it's just an early substitution. Yeah, it's 20 minutes off the pitch, and playing with a man down is very difficult. You know, you see the teams that get a yellow card and quickly get another one, they struggle big time, because you're going to be run off your feet. But it seems like it's adding a little bit of complication to the whole thing in one sense. I see some people saying it's kind of a stepping stone towards an orange card. Is that really going to come in? Like, we already have discussions around it. Imagine if there's another variable inside that as well. Like, so I'm not so sure. I didn't watch enough Super Rugby to see how it actually went and whether they've been lashing them out or not. But it's I'd be very much on the fence with it. The one that I think is a little bit contentious as well, and yeah, it'll be seen to speed up the game, but the goal line dropout. You know, you've got a goal line dropout because the pack is so dominant, they keep falling over the line. Yeah. You know, like you do see with teams that are like, they're up against a dominant pack, they find it really hard to get out of their territory. And, you know, if you get lucky and you hold one up, you get to boot the ball 50 yards and try to reassemble on the 10-meter line. You're going to end up back in your line at some stage, but like, it does give them a little bit of relief. And I think the the teams will start to crowd that area where the ball is being put down. You can see it happening already, where they just lie around the place. Like offside doesn't count, and you're jumping in the top of it, and it just becomes a bit of a pylon to block the camera angles. Like, so I think you'll see a lot of skills being like the coaches who are really at it will probably have sessions where they're going to a lot of holding things up. Who was it last weekend that literally got one hand under the ball? I can't remember who it was. It was incredible, but you'll see a lot more of that, I think. But it seems to be a little bit unfair on the attacking team with the dominant pack and the dominant maul. Like that Exeter team who get into the 22 and just score. Now, they didn't do it all the time last weekend, but they get in and just score. And if they don't score, they get another chance at it. Should they be punished, or should the defensive team be punished? I don't know. Like, it's definitely going to cause a lot of conversations. And like you said at the start, my column was very much around the lack of certainty around the laws that we already have. And obviously, with it being that period at the very middle of the World Cup cycle, you're going to get a bit of messing with laws so that we can actually tidy them up in the year going into maybe the 18 months going into the World Cup. But at the moment, I probably feel the most out of touch with the laws that I have been in the last couple of years. Not out of touch, but like just kind of going, what is the protocol here? Because in commentary last day, I think the first one, Brian O'Driscoll said, that could be a penalty, it could be a yellow card, or it could be a red card. That's without the red card for 20 minutes. Where do we stand that that's the decision-making process? He's on the World Rugby Board of some sort, isn't he? So he's involved in a lot of top-end conversations. He's obviously played enough rugby in his time, and he's commentating on every second game. So like, he's watched more rugby than the whole lot of us put together, and he can't decide which one of the 3 sanctions it is. I think the rest of us are in trouble if that's the case, you know?
Yeah, but at least officiating always gives a decent talking point in any sport. What else would we be talking about? So, but anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks to Fiona, Grace and Johnny for their time. You will be back next week when there will be a look ahead to the Rainbow Cup fixtures themselves, and then an analysis of Ireland against France, and maybe more contract or signing news of possible Simon Zebo proportions. So thanks a mil to everyone, and all the best.